All right, next up on our special senses is going to be hearing. In order to hear, the ear collects and amplifies sound waves that are going to be produced by vibrations. The loudness of a sound is going to be determined by the amplitude of the sound wave, and the pitch of a sound is determined by frequency of the sound waves. The outer ear is going to function the ear is going to contain three main parts: the outer ear, middle ear, and inner ear. The outer ear is going to function as our receiver. It's going to gather all of the sound waves and funnel them into our sensory systems. This portion is made up of the pinna and external auditory canal. The pinna is going to be the giant floppy portion on the outside of your head. What do you think its primary purpose is going to be? Its job is going to be gather the sound and channel it into the external auditory canal. This is what is also responsible for helping us determine sound direction. The external auditory canal is going to lead up to the tympanic membrane, or the eardrum. So this is going to channel all of those sound waves right into the tympanic eardrum, or the tympanic membrane, or the eardrum. The tympanic membrane is going to separate the outer ear from the middle ear. It's going to vibrate at the same frequency as the sound waves and transfer those vibrations to the middle ear. In order to do this effectively, it has to have nearly equal pressure on both sides of that membrane. So anytime you may undergo intense pressure changes, external environmental pressure changes, you may notice that your ear experiences something called popping. Or people may say, hey, my ears popped. What's happening, especially if you notice that sound may be muffled during this time, is that the pressure on the outside of the membrane is not equal to the pressure on the inside of the membrane, and it's preventing that membrane from vibrating at the correct frequency. Here's a diagram of the ear. Oh, there you go. Vibrates at the same frequency as the sound waves and transfers these vibrations to the middle ear. Here is what we're going to be looking at. Here's the outer ear. All the outer ear contains this whole region here. So it's going to contain the pinna, which is going to gather that sound, funnel it through the external auditory canal right into the eardrum. Now the eardrum pressure is going to be, the eardrum needs to have nearly equal pressure on the outside and on the inside. In order to help regulate that pressure, we have what is known as the auditory tube, or the eustachian tube. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment once we get towards the middle ear. The middle ear is going to be our amplifier region. This is going to consist of an air-filled cavity within the temporal bone of the skull and the three auditory bones that are named after their general shape. So those three bones are going to be the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. The malleus is going to be the hammer, the incus, the anvil, and the stapes looks like a little stirrup. Does anybody know what the role is of these three little bones? They're going to pick up vibrations from the tympanic membrane, and they're going to transfer them to the oval window. Now, the middle ear bones are going to convey airborne sounds from the eardrum to that oval window. The oval window is a sheet of tissue at the entrance of the inner ear. Now, the force of the eardrum's vibrations is going to be amplified 22 times in the middle ear, because we're transferring that information, that vibration, from air to fluid found in the middle ear. And this occurs because the eardrum is much larger than the oval window. So the vibrations that are found in this oval window, that are found on this eardrum, are going to be transferred to a much, much smaller surface area. So all of the pressure that is used to vibrate the bones coming from this membrane, this tympanic membrane, are going to be applied to a much smaller surface area. This is going to amplify that pressure. Now, the one final component of the middle ear that we're going to mention is the auditory tube, also known as the eustachian tube. This is going to connect the middle ear cavity with the throat. This is what's going to be responsible for alleviating those pressure differences. So you may see it if you're ever flying or you're undergoing severe changes in pressure. One of the things that you can do is chew gum. Chewing actually allows the bones that are found right in this region to open and close, and it may help open up or relax that auditory tube and allow pressure to move from your mouth, or allow air to move from your mouth up into your middle ear and help regulate that pressure. You can also try yawning. One thing that I have found most effective is actually to massage. sort of my jaw right in here in this area while I'm yawning or opening up my mouth. That seems to kind of put pressure and cause that eustachian tube to open up and allow for an equilibrium of pressure to be reached. So from the middle ear, we're going to move now into the inner ear. The inner ear is going to be the transmitter. First we have to collect, first we have the receiver in the outer ear, then we have the amplifier, now we have the transmitter. We need to get that information from our sensory organ into the brain. So this is going to contain two sensory organs that transmit messages to the brain for interpretation. And there are actually two special senses that are found here. One is going to be hearing. This is going to be conveyed by the cochlea. And then also the vestibular apparatus. This region over here is going to be responsible for conveying information about body position and movement. And so here we have our an overview of the brain, or not of the brain, I'm sorry, of the ear. I would like you to spend some time with this figure 9.13. This is going to give you a fantastic summary of all of the portions. You should be able to cover up all of the words and all of the descriptions and talk yourself through the main features of the hearing, or main features of the hearing sensory system. The pinna, the external auditory canal, tympanic membrane, malleus incus stapes, the oval window, vestibular apparatus, and cochlea, and know what their primary role is. To help you with that, we also have table 9.3 that's going to review the structures of the ear and their function. So this is going to do a really good job of helping to summarize that and put everything into words. So what I have here is the cochlea that's going to house the spiral organ of Corti. The cochlea is going to be Latin for snail. So this is region right in here. This is going to be responsible for hearing. And I just want to spend a little bit of time showing you how this organ works to transmit information. But I'm not going to quiz you over specifics. I just want to kind of show you how it works. So this particular organ, the cochlea, has two openings, one at the oval window and two at the round window. The stapes fits into the oval window for transmitting sound. The round window helps alleviate pressure. There are three longitudinal compartments that are going to be filled with fluid. The central compartment, or in the central compartment, the floor consists of a basilar membrane, which helps support the spiral organ. So here is going to be our middle compartment that we're looking at here. The spiral organ is most directly responsible for hearing. It consists of small hair cells and an overhanging tactile membrane. So here are little hair cells. Here is the tectorial membrane. And here's sort of the sequence of events in the inner ears. What happens is that the movement of the stapes against the oval window sets up pressure waves in the fluid of the inner ear. The movement of fluid causes the basilar membrane to swing up and down. So this membrane is going to pass up and down, and as it does, it's going to press projections on the hair cells against overlying tectorial membrane, which is going to bend the hair and alter the rate of the nerve impulses on the auditory nerve. This is ultimately going to carry sound to the brain. So it's the movement of these little hair-like projections that's going to carry information along these nerve endings and send that information to the brain. Loudness. The louder the sound, the more the hair cells are stimulated, the more each individual hair cell bends, and which will increase the number of impulses. And the brain interprets the increased number of impulses as a louder sound. So the more pressure put on there, the more impulses reach your brain, the louder your brain interprets the sound. Pitch is going to be a little bit different. Sounds of different pitch activate hair cells at different places along the basilar membrane. The brain interprets input from hair cells in different areas as sounds of different pitch. So if these hairs are stimulated over here but not over here, your brain will interpret that as different pitch. The vestibular apparatus, that's going to be this organ over here. This is a fluid-filled maze of chambers and canals within the inner ear that consists of semicircular canals, which will help you with balance when moving, and the vestibule, which will help with balance when you are not moving. And I do have a figure that's going to go over some of those different differences in the vestibular apparatus. But first, we're going to watch a quick summary video about hearing.
Pictured here is the structure of the human ear. It consists of three parts: the outer, middle, and inner ear. The outer ear includes the pinna and the external auditory canal and functions as a receiver. The pinna gathers and funnels sound waves into the external auditory canal, which then transmits the sound to the eardrum. The middle ear is composed of the eustachian tube, the eardrum, and three tiny bones, the malleus, incus, and stapes. The eustachian tube, a passageway leading from the middle ear to behind the nasal cavity, maintains equal air pressure between the middle ear and the atmosphere. When sound waves reach the eardrum, also called the tympanic membrane, the membrane begins to vibrate. This in turn sets the bones of the middle ear in motion. Together, the three bones of the middle ear amplify the vibrations of the eardrum and pass them on to the inner ear. The inner ear consists of the oval window, the fluid-filled cochlea, the round window, the vestibular apparatus, and the auditory nerve. Sound waves are transferred from the bones in the middle ear to the oval window. Vibration of the oval window sets the fluid in the cochlea in motion. Sensory cells within the cochlea convert the pressure waves in the cochlea to neural messages that are then sent to the brain via the auditory nerve. The round window, located at the opposite end of the cochlea from the oval window, serves to relieve the pressure created by the movement of the oval window. The cochlea houses the organ of Corti. The organ of Corti contains the sensory receptors that aid in the actual process of hearing. The receptors, or hair cells, are supported on the basilar membrane and contain tiny stereocilia, hairs, embedded in the gelatinous tectorial membrane. The basilar membrane, sensory hair cells, and the tectorial membrane form the functional unit of hearing in the organ of Corti. When fluid movement causes the basilar membrane to vibrate, a shearing force is created between the basilar membrane and the tectorial membrane. The stereocilia of the hair cells move and bend because of the shearing force. This movement causes the sensory events that ultimately results in nerve impulses in the auditory nerve, which are then sent to the brain for interpretation. The greater the pressure changes in the fluid, the stronger the bending of the basilar membrane, and the more hair cells that are stimulated. The brain interprets the increased number of impulses as louder sound. If we could uncoil the cochlea, we could see that it consists of upper and lower fluid-filled compartments, the vestibular and tympanic canals, and the basilar membrane embedded in a central compartment, the cochlear duct. The basilar membrane at the base of the cochlea, towards the middle ear, is stiffer than at the apical region, which is both wider and more flexible. This property causes different parts of the basilar membrane to vibrate maximally in response to different sound frequencies. The sensory hair cells in that region of the cochlea will become more active, and the brain interprets input from different regions of the basilar membrane as different pitches. The vestibular apparatus includes the semicircular canals and the vestibule. At the base of each of the three semicircular canals are sac-like swellings called ampullae, singular, ampulla. Sensory hair cells are found within the ampullae, as well as in swellings within the vestibule called the utricle and saccule. Like the sensory cells of the cochlea, the hair cells of the vestibular apparatus respond to changes in fluid movement within the canals. In this case, however, it is the movement of the head that causes the fluid in the canals to move. Because they monitor sudden movements of the head, receptors in the semicircular canals help keep us balanced when we move, contributing to our sense of dynamic equilibrium. Receptors in the vestibule, likewise, help keep us balanced when we're not moving by relaying information about the position of the head with respect to gravity, contributing to our sense of static equilibrium.